Here's the funny thing, and I've been saying this for a decade now. People come in thinking wholesaling is kind of the holy grail, the easy way to make quick money. But here's the thing. As a wholesaler, a lot of times you are reselling properties to flippers, which means you need to not only hit that number, that purchase number that the flipper needs, but then you need to get it lower because you need to make your profit. So in theory, to be a wholesaler, a good wholesaler, you need to be a better negotiator. You need to be better at finding deals. You need to be better at getting cheaper deals than a flipper would be, because you can't make your profit at the same numbers that a flipper could.
Welcome to the Bar Down Investing Show. Here are your hosts, Kyle Wilson and Jay Scott.
Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Drunk Real Estate. I got my best buddy over here, Jay, and we also have Matt and Greg joining us. Guys, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about what you're up to, and more importantly, what you're drinking.
I get to go first. Greg Simpson. Been a real estate investor for a little over 10 years. Kind of like you, Matt. I do a little bit of everything. I run a real estate brokerage. We've got about 60 agents. Always fluctuates up and down a little bit. Been flipping houses, wholesaling. Recently kind of moved into more of the rental stuff, hence the cash flow is king. So, like I said, been doing it a long time. It's been quite a wild ride, the different markets that I've gone through already in my short career. So, it's a little bit about me.
Sweet. Matt Gardner. Some people know me as Roar as well. I was a fighter pilot previously. I flew F-35s and F-15s in the Air Force for about 11 years. Left the military with some medical stuff, had cancer. Luckily, that's all behind me now. And, like I said earlier, I have hair. Life's good. Life's good now past that.
Hey, now.
Well, sorry.
Well, you're breezing over a lot of very interesting cancer, fighter pilot. Anyway,
no. It's great.
And BD.
But what everyone cares about here is the real estate investing side. As far as real estate investing, I have a real estate team from the sales side. So I'm not a broker, but I do have a team. We've about 125 agents on the team internationally. Locally, with my local production team, we have about 30 agents who sell. And so love the sales side. Our focus is mainly working with investors, and that's my true passion. I'm actually writing a book, and it'll be coming out in May, called Supersonic Real Estate, and it's all about teaching agents how to work with investors, because I think it's a really underserved market.
100%.
And then from there, as far as the investing space, I'm a big fan of the multifamily. So we do syndications. We have about 750 units in the multifamily syndication side. We have RV park and mobile home park and short-term rentals. My original bread and butter was in the Destin, Florida area, so the Panhandle area where short-term rentals are king. And I just love it. I mean, do some flips as well, which are, if you're going to be an investor, you're going to flip every now and again. So
just as important though, guys. What are you drinking right now?
I am drinking local Cigar City. This is their High Life beer, so one of their more popular beers from a great local brewery.
One of my favorites for sure.
Yeah.
I've got Knob Creek Rye. Neat.
Jay, what do you got over there?
I went boring today. It's just a Joel Gott cab. Just regular run-of-the-mill cab.
So I forgot to mention we're in Tampa, Florida right now. I flew down
Tampa Bay.
Sorry, Tampa Bay. I didn't even know there was a difference.
I don't know. I'm just making shit up.
So I went with a local beer mainly because it sounds awesome. This is called the Reef Donkey beer. It's actually pretty good. I'm a fan. Great. So it sounds like you guys have a lot of experience all over the place, and we spent a previous episode talking about pivots and how a lot of people have spent this time with COVID, with interest rate hikes, kind of pivoting where their focus is. Where do you guys see the pivots happening? I know you run a RIA. You'll probably have a pretty good pulse on the type of people who are coming in and what they're focusing on. So we'll start with you. Where do you see the people pivoting, and where do you see the current focus to be?
I feel like a lot of people are definitely coming in on the multifamily side. So we actually are pretty multifamily heavy this year on our guests. So a lot of people are, it's the new sexy thing is multifamily, right? Syndications. It's become like this new thing of sexiness. The other thing that we talked about is creative financing has definitely got a lot more popular as of late. But wholesaling is always probably the number one driving force for people coming to a RIA, because they watch a YouTube video. They've been, somewhere around seeing something about making quick cash, real easy to do, which it's not. If you've ever wholesaled, it is the hardest thing I think to do in all of this business, because you're creating yourself a job. But yeah, that's definitely the focus is switching to multifamily.
Yeah. Have you seen any drop off of anybody where like you mentioned wholesaling still going strong, but let's say flipping. Have you seen like the number of
that's
flipping
pretty
people
much
kinda-
cratered at this
Yeah.
point. Flipping has cratered. We had a few properties that we bought right after the interest rates spiked that we turned them into rentals, but or they're being turned into rentals as we speak. A lot of them are in the process of renovation right now. But yeah, I think the flipping game is pretty much, I won't say it's over, because if you can still get a good deal, you can still flip and make a profit. But most sellers haven't realized that it's not 2021 anymore. And they haven't come to the realization that their house that their neighbor sold is not worth the $100,000 more than they think it's worth.
So are you just completely cutting that out of your repertoire, flipping, or are you still just
No, it's going to be more rare. But you can't, like you said, you can't be an investor and not flip still.
Yeah, exactly.
So if it comes across your plate, I'm still going to do it. I'll either wholesale it or I will take it on as a fix and flip for sure.
Here's the funny thing, and I've been saying this for a decade now. People come in thinking wholesaling's kind of the holy grail, the easy way to make quick money. But here's the thing. As a wholesaler, a lot of times you are reselling properties to flippers, which means you need to not only hit that number, that purchase number that the flipper needs, but then you need to get it lower because you need to make your profit. So in theory, to be a wholesaler, a good wholesaler, you need to be a better negotiator. You need to be better at finding deals. You need to be better at getting cheaper deals than a flipper would be, because you can't make your profit at the same numbers that a flipper could.
Yeah, what I'll say there is I think a lot of wholesalers need to understand what you emphasized a little bit there was creative financing. If a wholesaler were to bring me a deal right now that has some sort of subject to terms or owner financing terms or some sort of hybrid where it's a subject to that you turn to a BRRRR, right? Where it's a subject to BRRRR kind of mentality where you don't intentionally refi, but you just leverage the subject to terms, or novation agreements. Novation agreements are another way to win right now in flipping as well.
So I have a feeling a lot of our audience has no idea. If you've taken the real estate agent course, you know what a novation agreement is, but most people don't. Can you expand on that a little bit?
So novation agreement is where you effectively have an agreement with the seller that whenever you flip the house, you actually never take ownership of the house as a flipper. You will then you will improve the house, but you effectively have a lien on the house whenever the house sells. And so it's a contract with the seller saying, hey, I'm going to come in, I'm going to fix your house, but after the house sells, I want to make 20 grand. And so you may make, as the owner, you may make 20 grand or 100 grand or whatever it happens to be, but I want to make my profit margin. You also may lose a little bit of money, but it's really good for a seller who's very confident on the value of their house. Like, my house will definitely sell for $600,000 after you flip it. Okay, well, if that's true, then let me get $50,000 of that. You get the rest, but I'm going to flip it, and that's kind of how we roll. So there's obviously pros and cons to that because you don't take ownership. You're investing money into a house that you don't own. However, you're covered through the novation agreement itself and the lien that you put on the house.
What happens if they don't sell? What if they say, I don't want to list it with you now and sell it? Is that just that big risk that you take?
That's all terms in the novation agreement. You can sell the house through the novation agreement. So you get equity ownership in the house to be able to sell it.
10-4.
Yeah.
Interesting. So Matt, is that something you're focusing on, or what has been your shift in the last 2 years of, let's say, 2019? What were you focusing on versus what you're focusing on now?
It's 2023. 2 years ago was not 2019.
Okay.
It goes by fast during COVID.
I pivoted there and I said, okay, 2019 was pre-COVID. So I kind of wanted to get the pre-COVID in there.
Sure. Yeah. So pre-COVID, everything in my area in Destin, Florida was short-term rentals. I mean, and then that blew up even more with COVID, low interest rates. Everyone wanted short-term rentals. Everyone was traveling. Everyone had the extra cash to travel. And so in Destin, Florida, it blew up, right? Short-term rental blew up. And that was my focus for sure, personally. I'm still buying short-term rentals. I just bought a 5-bedroom in Panama City Beach a couple months ago, but as far as where my focus is now is definitely creative financing, without a doubt. So looking for any deals that I can, so last December, so 2 months ago, when it's March now, 3 months ago, I bought a 9-unit in Destin, a 9-unit portfolio. I bought it with conventional financing. 5 of the units I bought at 9%. 4 of the units were at 10.8%. That wasn't hard money. That was conventional portfolio lending. And it was ridiculous, right? So that made sense as a flipper. I'm flipping 4 of them. I'm holding on to the other ones, and it's going to be fine from a flipping standpoint. I already sold 2 of them. However, most of my other deals that we've closed recently have been seller financing, which is huge right now. I'm very happy. People don't understand the benefit of terms. If what his shirt says is true, if cash flow is king, if you don't really care as much on the equity piece versus the cash flow, I will happily take terms that give me higher cash flow and accept that maybe I don't have a good equity position right now. Maybe I have a house, a short-term rental that I can buy for. Everyone's willing to buy $400,000, but if I can get it for $450,000 at owner financing at 0% interest with a 7-year balloon, yeah, I'll take that all day because I get an extra $5, $6, $7, $10,000 a year in cash flow. So creative financing for me is definitely big. And then I've shifted my short-term rental focus to being kind of a medium-term rental focus, which is kind of a newer niche that a lot of people aren't emphasizing, especially in markets that are seasonal, like Tampa, where we are now, or Destin, where in the off season we'll get some traveling nurses in there or something to where we can kind of fill that gap a little bit better.
One thing you said I think is really important. You're talking about terms that allow you to define or the other party to define who's getting the equity, who's getting the cash flow. And this is actually, I think, an interesting topic because we've had this discussion for years where people say, what's more important, cash flow or equity? Net worth or cash flow, whatever. And kind of my take on this has always been equity and cash flow are the same thing in different forms. It's kind of like ice and water. You add some heat and you can convert ice to water. You take away heat, you convert water to ice. Equity and cash flow. You can convert equity to cash flow. You can take equity and you can buy cash flow. Likewise, you can take cash flow generally and sell it and hoard the equity. And so when we talk about creative financing, a lot of times I like to say that creative financing is really understanding the relationship between equity and cash flow and being able to give the other party what they need. And it could also be tax benefits. It could also be future appreciation. There are lots of things, but basically creative financing is all about finding out what the other person wants, giving it to them, and you kind of taking the other side of the coin, which is still valuable. It just may be a different form of value. Does that make sense?
100%. And I'll take the example of comparing equity versus cash flow. One of the concerns that I had early on with structuring equity cash flow positions with seller financing would be, a lot of people are concerned about a balloon payment, right? So let's say you have a house you want to sell, Greg, and you're willing to sell it. All these wholesalers come to you and they're offering you $150,000, but you want nothing less than $250,000. I'm like, okay, sweet. I'll offer you $250,000 because you're really proud of your house and you understand the value of your house. However, what I'm going to say is I'll give a 5-year balloon, $250,000 with, we'll say 3-4% interest, whatever it is I need for my cash flow. And then in 5 years, if your house isn't worth $250,000, I get an additional 5 years to that balloon payment. So for me, that was always my big crutch. If I didn't want to be put into a square corner as an investor, but to learn about some terms like that where you can take a balloon payment, but really make those terms benefit you as the investor as well as the seller. I mean, the seller doesn't want to get screwed if you, for some reason, can't pay them back. So anyways, that's one of the kind of things I try to highlight when it comes to creative financing is not screwing yourself.
So these shifts that you made, is this just because of the high interest rates, or is there other driving factors behind it?
Sorry, I'm spilling my beer. Too drunk for drunk real estate here, apparently. Jeez. High interest rates are by far the biggest driving factor right now, without a doubt. Interest rates are driving. It's a combination of, and sellers have not realized that their houses aren't worth as much, in my mind, right, as an investor, right? But also interest rates are crushing cash flow. And so it's tough to bridge that gap. As an investor, I focus on working with agents, and my emphasis with them has been creatively getting concessions to make the deals work as well. And so, concessions are big. We just locked up one last week at $500,000. The guy's buying it with his VA loan. He's going to house hack. And with a VA loan, you can do a 2% permanent rate buy down plus a 3-2-1 or a 2-1 temporary buy down. So his interest rate went from 7.5% to 3.5%. So as an investor, like to be able to do that, and the nice thing about that, the seller bought all those buy downs through concessions. And so, it's interest rates are definitely a driving factor for sure. I don't know if you're seeing the same thing in your brokerage.
100%. That's why the agent purge has already started. We briefly talked about that. The agent purge has started. We're seeing it at our brokerage, and every brokerage around town. Everyone's starting to go get jobs again because they thought it was going to be so easy to get their license and just make boatloads of cash. And that's just not the case. It's just whether you're a wholesaler, you're an investor, a fix and flip or whatever, it's hard to get that momentum. And in a tough market, they all just go away, which has been nice for sure. Yeah, we've definitely pivoted away from fix and flip because of interest rates. Because the buyers on the back end, that pool just dried up as well. Now they're coming back a little bit, but I think that's not going to be a long-term thing. I think Summertime, we're going to have another bubble, if you will. So we're going to have to pivot again. Or the ones that haven't pivoted are the ones that are going to get really smacked in the face. If they're like, oh, the market's hot again, let's buy some fix and flips now, they're going to get really smacked in the face, I think, come summertime.
I mean, we can talk to Jay, who's the specialist in estimating rehab costs, right?
Oh, Lord.
For me, I'm a terrible flipper. Is a self-proclaimed terrible flipper, to where I take my rehab cost that I estimate and I add 50% because I'm like, I'm terrible. I know I'm going to make mistakes, right? And when it comes to the ARV now, I'm doing kind of a similar thing. I don't take 50%, but I do add the opposite buffer, where a lot of flippers a year or two ago, they might be like, it's going to appreciate. I have some slop, right? But I'd be curious your take on the flipping side in the current market.
Well, yeah, and I'll pass it back to Greg here, but I'm curious your thoughts, because from my perspective, it's not just flipping. It's kind of the difference between transactional real estate deals and long-term hold deals. So transactional meaning you buy something today and it may be a flip, but it could be a multifamily, it could be a mobile home, it could be, I mean, you can flip those things. But basically buying something with the intention of reselling it in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, even 24 months, versus the intention of holding something for cash flow appreciation, tax benefits, longer term benefits. It feels to me, and again, Greg, I'd love your take here. It feels to me now is not the right time to be doing transactional real estate, because we don't know where the market's going to be 3, 6, 12, 24 months from now. But if you buy something with the intent to hold it, get the cash flow, the appreciation, the tax benefits, the amortization, which is just a fancy word for loan pay down, all of those things, you're actually going to benefit over 3, 5, 7, 10 years. So those are still good today. Would you agree? Disagree?
100%. It's just a mindset shift. Again, I'm coming from the flipping background. I've been doing it for 10 years. I do not want to do that anymore. Like, it's just not in my. It's just I've had to take the mindset shift. Like, good Lord. So I'm only halfway through this one. Holy hell. I'm waiting on my food still. But no, absolutely. Our plan now is to hold for a minimum of 5 years and run that cash flow up, because again, in 5 years, we're weathering whatever storm comes over the next 2 years. And I don't really care what comes. I don't think Tampa's going to be hit too hard with everything that's going on with Tampa and the movement of people to Florida and Tampa specifically. But I can't guarantee that either. So I am absolutely holding everything for the long term. And we actually shifted even away from short-term rentals or long-term rentals, and we're doing all medium-term rentals.
Yeah.
And we're hitting a market that is really been hit with Tampa Bay explosion with rents going through the roof. We're going the rent by the room model.
Yep,
and it's
totally.
allowing people to rent the rooms by the week, and it's affordable for them. They're not having to come up with a first, last, and security deposit, which in Tampa now can range anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 up front. And these people don't have it.
So let me ask you a question real quick. And I'm not necessarily asking for the people out there. I'm asking for me, because I don't know the answer to this.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about short-term, medium-term, long-term, I do a lot of rentals, but all my rentals are annual rentals at this point, which I consider to be long-term. What are your guys' definition? And because I know, Matt, you also do short and mid-term rentals.
Correct.
What's your definition, Greg, of short-term versus mid-term versus long-term?
Well, the state of Florida says short term is anything under 28 days. So I guess I would say it like that. It's probably your version of short term. But what we're doing, again, so we're like short term, because our rentals are by the week. But what makes them what I would call medium term is that the average tenant stays in that room for anywhere between 6 and 10 months. So yes, it's a weekly rental, but they're not turning over every week like you have an Airbnb. They might stay for 3 nights, but then you're turning that room over. Or they're staying for a week and you're turning that house over, and that becomes its own business in itself. And that's not what we're really doing and not focusing on. We're focusing on, while they are weekly, they could up and move anytime they want. They just don't, because they don't have any other options of where to go. Because there's just not a huge marketplace for those people to be at.
Is there any legal or tax benefits to keeping that weekly versus saying, hey, we know you're going to be here for 6 months, sign for 6 months?
It's still technically a year-long lease with the company that we use to help place the members, because they're technically not tenants.
Greg's playing legal roles here to save.
I'm not an attorney and I'm not a CPA. So there's obviously some gray area that we play in with this. The tax benefit is, again, we're holding it long-term. We are holding it with a a long-term lease that is renting those rooms to members of the platform.
There's a couple nuances too, because
Yep.
I know up northeast, it's a big issue where you never want to have a lease longer than 28 days, because then you get
Evictions.
to eviction laws,
Yeah.
and you can never get somebody out. If they wanted to stay, then all of a sudden it's winter time, and they're not kicking anyone out in the winter, and so
we deal with the same thing in our RV parks. You look at mobile home park versus RV park. It's effectively long-term rentals versus short-term rentals in the RV world, mobile home park world, and that's one of the big reasons I love RV parks. Is one, obviously I'm not going to be maintaining them. With the mobile home park, you may have tenant-owned homes or park-owned homes, but with the RV world, I can just go shut off their water and shut off their electricity if they didn't pay, and then they're out. You know what I mean? It's as simple as that to kick somebody out. But with my RV parks, we do medium-term rental RVs. Like we're not the fancy Class A parks. We have no amenities, but it's a place for people to come and live in their RVs, where they're typically transitional, power pole workers, or just transitional workers who are there for 3, 6, 9, 12 months at a time. But the benefit, exactly what you're saying, is the benefit is you don't have to. There's tax benefits in Florida specifically if you have a certain percentage of an RV park that is there for more than 3 months at a time. Then you don't pay the hotel tax in Florida, and so you do avoid paying the short-term rental tax game basically. But from the management perspective, it's also nice because you're not flipping RVs every weekend.
So you guys pivoting to these medium term and these other type investments, is this just out of necessity, or is this something that you want to do long term? Is it like, if we see a Fed pivot in July and kind of things get back to a little bit quote unquote normal, like are you just going to jump right back into the flipping, or like
Absolutely
you've
not.
jump shape?
No, I'm all in on this. We've got a couple of things we're doing. But we are all in on this because it fills two buckets for us, right? You've got the capitalistic bucket because these cash flow like effing crazy. Okay, I was just at my one this morning. It's going to be 12 bedrooms and 4 baths in this single family house. It's going to gross rent at $12,000 a month. Our net after everything is going to be about $7,000 a month of net operating income after debt service, everything. That's just nuts.
It's a good investment.
Hell yeah, it is. I
Okay,
paid $350,000 for this house and put $150,000 in renovation to it.
Am I allowed to ask about the legality of this?
Sure. I'm not an attorney. Go talk to my attorney. No. Again, the legality is that I'm kind of one of those people that would, if the city came to me and said, hey, look, we don't like what you're doing, I'd be like, well, I'm doing your job. I'm providing a service where the second part comes in is that we're filling a bucket that the city of Tampa especially has not been able to solve, and that's the affordability crisis that we're having. We are solving that problem for these tenants who work at the Walmarts, the Home Depots, and the Targets of the world who are paid minimum wage, who cannot, under any circumstance, afford to live in this city where they work. So you want to come at me? I got connections with the city, or with the media, and I will literally stand in front of this thing and say, these people are trying to kick these people out of something that they can afford, that they will not solve that problem because capitalism always seems to get in the way. And I'm not anti-capitalism, obviously, but capitalism gets in the way of affordable housing because affordable housing has this negative connotation to it that we all talk about. Oh, we're going to provide affordable housing, and then all of a sudden the rent's $1,800 a month because capitalism gets in the way because everyone eventually gets greedy. So
yeah, I will say to Kyle's point, what it really comes down to, you have short-term rental, medium-term rental, long-term rental, right? One may be great because there's not much work, right? Yeah, I'm assuming, Jay, you're not involved in like the monthly collections, and you're not really involved from a monthly standpoint with managing your long-term rentals, right?
At all.
Yeah. So when it comes to medium-term rentals, you're kind of in that tweener land, right? And it's not necessarily a long-term rental, but the management is kind of a new niche. Like if someone were be a traditional medium-term rental management company, that's not really a thing in today's market. I think that's going to become a thing.
Yep.
And then you got the short-term rental, which the management is probably the most intensive, which is from a cost perspective. In Destin, one of my favorite property managers in Destin, he charges 30% for the short-term rentals. So from the long-term rental wise, from a property management perspective, on my cheapest end, I pay 3% on my big, apartment complexes. And the medium-term rental, it's like, where do you land in payment and involvement? But it also it's a big change in cash flow. Long-term rental is probably going to be the least amount of cash flow, typically, if you're going to generalize. Medium-term rental is kind of that medium land, and then short-term rental should, by nature of you turning more people through, it should create the most cash flow.
Yeah. So what we're doing is we work with a platform that actually handles all the membership stuff. So they handle all the payments, all the membership issues. They take 12% though off the top. So what
for the medium term ones.
For the medium terms ones, yeah.
And
for the room
we
rentals.
call it membership.
The memberships.
I love it. I love it.
They manage the members. They manage the intake of cash. They have a really great dashboard for, like, if the members say, hey, the AC is not working, then our property management has to step in, and then they take care of that kind of thing.
Who are your clientele mainly? Like for our medium-term rentals, it's mainly traveling pilots who are in crash pads, if you will, or traveling nurses. I'm just curious, like where are you focusing your efforts?
So we don't handle any of the membership. We don't handle any of that stuff, so we don't know where they're getting them from. We don't. They do all the background checks. They check for evictions. They check for
Who is they?
income. The company's called Pad Split. Have you heard of them yet?
I have not.
So they're only in a few markets across the country. I think they're in like 8 to 12 markets. They're not going to be in what you would call a heavily Democratic area like Austin, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
They're pretty much in the red states and the red areas because of the eviction laws and stuff like that, because we still have to deal with that if that's an issue. But yeah, they handle all of the member placement, the member issues. They have, it's almost like Section 8, where like they have a 3-strike rule. So if they like do things that upset other members, they get 3 strikes, they're out, and they lose their voucher like a Section 8 would. So these people, like, they take good care of the houses. They take that like it's their own. I mean, I've done the changeovers myself just to kind of learn the process, and our houses have been spick and span, and it's a beautiful thing. Whereas, like, Airbnb, you're like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to walk into here, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that's the
average,
exception,
not,
right?
yeah.
The exception's not the norm. I mean,
Yeah.
the nice thing about Airbnb and VRBO, they're rating, right?
Sure,
You
but you got
reviews.
long-term renters who they get pissed off and they damage the walls, and you got to fix that. And it takes you 2 weeks to turn over the house and da-da-da. So so far we like it. But yeah, we don't do it with anything with the members at all. We just have to manage the property itself. So if the AC breaks, the roof leaks, whatever, that we have to manage that, and the room changeover, which again is not very often. So yeah, we're building a whole fund around this at this point. So accredited investors can invest in this fund that's basically, going after these types of properties that we can add bedrooms to them and manage them that way.
It's awesome.
We're also going tech. Well, I know we got to do this, but
I'm glad you guys brought up property management, because it's a real sticking point for a lot of people, especially when we talk about these medium term. That's a whole new category. What do you do for your medium term, and how did you kind of arrive there?
So when it comes to property management and the medium-term rental, like I said, it's kind of a new place. There's these new companies apparently I wasn't even aware of that specialize in medium-term rentals and have membership, and I'm definitely going to be picking your brain afterwards, Greg, on that. What I've done personally, I've just leveraged the obvious sites. So Zillow is actually a pretty good site to throw out a medium-term rental, just furnished, and you throw out what the rent is, and people will bite if the area is correct and the price is right. So Zillow is pretty easy as far as attracting tenants. There's other sites that crash pads for pilots, like I said. There's Furnished Finder, which is a nurse website as well, which focuses on that. There's a bunch of websites. If you just Google kind of medium-term rentals with whatever niche it happens to be. Like if I'm downtown Tampa near the hospital, I'm going to focus on nurses. If I'm near the airport or the Air Force Base, I'm going to focus on pilots. It depends on where you are.
So do you have your own like kind of management company or team that does all of this for you then?
Yeah, so I've always been a very big fan of developing every investment I've ever done has been a partnership of some sort. I've never done one by myself, and so every partnership I've been very intentional with. My first partnerships was like, I don't have money, but I have time, and I have what I think the knowledge in order to start this going on. So that was my first couple investments. But as I've grown and in the nest egg's grown, like I have the money, I don't have the time, but I have the knowledge. So who can fill the time? And so my partnerships has been around kind of filling that gap of the time aspect of it. And so my partnerships with the latest medium-term rental that we did, we have a partner who came in. He's an agent on my team. And he said,
leverage those agents, baby.
They're great. He's motivated. He's hungry.
Learn.
Yeah, he's hungry. He knows what he wants. And so he's like, hey, man, I'll do it. And so we developed an equity split that I was happy with, a capital split that I was happy with. And he said, I'll run it 100% with the kind of your guidance. And so he's running it basically exclusively, and he'll give me a call, once a week type of thing to kind of give me an update. And so same thing with the RV park. I had another agent who was really hungry, and he's like, hey, man, I'll manage your RV park. I said, sweet. So $1,000 a month to manage my RV park, which is great for a 60-pad RV park. It's super cheap when it comes to that.
So have you always kind of done it in-house, or have you ever tried the third-party management?
Yeah, I mean, traditional management is always an issue, right? I mean, when it comes to my apartment complexes, specifically the one I think I told you guys off camera, but I was being sued by the mayor of Mobile for a silly, frivolous thing that was going on. But we had recently gone through a property manager there. We had recently hired another one. After the mayor came into my property manager's office on site with Fox News and NBC News and 6 attorneys behind him. It was a big deal. Mayor, that property manager, we thought she was great. She was a prior Marine who had been to Fallujah, like hardcore, seen some stuff, you know what I mean? And she's like, I've never felt more scared in my life than when that happened. I was like, okay, so she quit. Then we go to a new property manager, and now we're literally in the process of transitioning that property manager out. So it's really tough to find in the long-term rental space, short-term rental space, medium-term, wherever you are. There's plenty of people that are going to try to sell you on property management tools and tips and management fees or whatever. It's really tough to find a good partner, though. I mean, Jay, I know with your portfolio, what are you finding for property management?
Well, so I want to kind of take a higher level view here, and I 100% agree with you. I feel like there are certain types of real estate that lend itself, maybe just because it's been around longer. We have a more entrenched industry. Certain types of real estate lend themselves well to property management. If you're doing long-term rentals, it's easy to find long-term property managers because there are just a million of them out there. People know that business model. It's been around for 30, 40, 50 years. Likewise, when we talk about syndications and doing large multifamily, you get up into 100 units or 120 or 150 units, and property management's easy. You find a full-time property management staff, full-time maintenance, you pay them 3%, you pay some payroll costs, and everything works out nicely. But then there are these other niches where property management becomes literally the limiting factor, the roadblock, the thing that makes the investment strategy difficult. And so on the multifamily side, it's kind of like anything between 20 and 80 units typically.
Yeah.
It's really tough because you're not making enough money to bring in full-time property management, but the units are too big to bring in a typical single-family property management company because they need to be doing showings every day and they need to be doing maintenance every day or multiple times a day. And so if you own 20 to 80 units, property management's really tough. Likewise, long-term property management, tons of companies out there do that, but mid-term property management and to a large extent short-term property management these days, it's really hard to find because these are new models. Mm-hmm. We don't have a lot of evolution in the space. We don't have a lot of competition. So basically you're paying too much because there's not enough supply out there to make it an efficient market. And you don't have enough people that have been doing it for 5 or 10 or 20 years because it's only been around for 2 or 3 or 4 years. And so it's hard to find a good provider, a good property management provider. And so for people that are doing short-term or mid-term rentals or 20 to 80 units, the question becomes, do you have a solution to this problem?
For short-term rentals, fine. I'll let Greg speak on the medium-term because I think he's got a better handle than I do on that personally. For short-term rentals, out of the 300 properties we sold last year, probably 290 of them we've pushed to self-management. Because in a short-term rental space, self-management, even if you're a busy person, up to about 5 properties is totally doable. You can automate your messaging system. You can automate your review process. Like every one of my clients, every one of my guests who stay in my short-term rentals, they get 1 of 3 reviews. Jay was a great guest. He communicated very well. Come again, Jay. Greg was awesome. He kept the place super clean. Greg, you were awesome. Please come again, Greg. And Kyle, he was, it was just the same review. Everyone gets these 3 reviews.
You never think of anything good to say about Kyle.
I was like, Kyle, he's
I'm
a
sure
nice,
he's
a nice guy. Yeah. And so, you automate the communication, you automate the reviews, you automate the pricing algorithm, which is a big one, the pricing. Like when Lady Gaga comes into Tampa, I don't want to have to worry about increasing my prices. I want that to be automated. And then you automate your interaction with your cleaners and your maintenance man. So like every time someone gets booked, my cleaner automatically gets a notification. And it's very, very hands-off. So, I have clients, I have one in Shanghai, I have another one in Argentina who manage their short-term rentals from afar in Destin. And so it's it can be super hands-off. But the medium-term rental space, you kind of, it sounds like you leverage it to a property management company.
Well, we own the property management company, so that kind of helps.
There you go.
So yeah, that's part of all Greg does.
So how did you get there though? So I'm guessing that's not what you jumped into right away. Like what was the process of you eventually owning the management company that runs all of this?
My partner handles all of that stuff. Again, leverage, right? I don't do anything with property management whatsoever. He has, I guess, but he really runs it. He's about 450 doors, whether it's single family, multifamily. But we're still learning the process of the medium term. We can set up notifications for our cleaning person to go through and do the turnover on it. Again, it's not a big deal. You're talking like literally so far, everyone's been about 5 to 10 minutes to turn over the room. So like it's not a huge lift, but we're learning that and building that out right now as we speak. So But overall, if you do a decent job, like everything else, like I've always been preaching to all the members of my RIA, all of our clients that have come through the brokers. If you're going to buy a rental property, don't half-ass your rehab, because all that does is push the can down the road so that your AC breaks in 1 or 2 years versus 10. So you're always dealing with those little headaches, right? So when we renovate our properties, we renovate them as if we were flipping them and turning them over as a really nice finished product, so that we're not having to get those calls all the time that the AC's broke, the water lines are clogged up, or whatever the case is. I mean, you can't defer all maintenance, obviously. But we try to do our best to make sure that we aren't setting our tenants and our properties, members and properties up for success, right? That's the last thing I want to do, is be getting those phone calls all the time, or I should say notifications on the app that, hey, this person submitted a ticket because XYZ thing has happened. So we try to build out that process and that systems that we're not having to deal with that stuff all the time, you know?
Interesting. I think that's a good place to pivot. We pretty good discussion around all that stuff, but let's have some fun here now. Maybe play a little bit of drinking games. Everyone's still got a little bit of drink left. We usually start with our favorite one is Would You Rather, and I'll start with a serious one, because you guys both seem like you started off doing, one unit at a time, and now you're starting a fund. You're doing some syndications. If you had to focus on one thing right now, would you rather focus on a big portfolio of all together, bring investors in that way, or would you rather focus on kind of just one at a time?
Large portfolio versus one at a time? Always a large portfolio. Mitigating my risk, plain and simple. One at a time. If the market goes to crap, or that deal goes to crap, something happens, that one deal, you're all in on that one. You're over leveraged one way or the other on a single property at a time. So I'd rather have a lot of properties that I can pivot around and move around, that says, like, I'm an 80-20 guy. So,
but like package them all together, like that's kind of, you'd rather focus on that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to Jay's point earlier, I think one of the biggest variables in success of an investment, a large investment, is the property management. And so I'm a big fan of the larger portfolio purchase, to where there's plenty of options to professional property management companies, to where my headache right now, where I am initially as an investor, I was really focused on, I want to grow my wealth. So whatever it takes, time involvement, energy, whatever I need to do, I'm going to grow. I want capital and grow. But once you get to a point where you have so much capital, you don't really care about the money anymore. You care more about time. Like I really care about ROT, my return on my time, versus my return on my investments nowadays. So that's a big variable. And so to your point, I'd probably focus on the larger investment rather than the single family.
Yeah, so it's funny you talk about ROT, and it's a term that I don't think I ever heard that term before a year or two ago, and now we talk about it all the time. Kyle and I had an hour drive up here. We were talking about that on the drive up here. So yeah, it's really important, and I'm a big fan of economies of scale, efficiencies. Basically, being able to put in place systems and processes that make everything easier. And managing one property takes X number of hours. Managing two properties shouldn't take 2X number of hours. Managing three properties shouldn't take 3X. And so if you're good at scaling, if you're good at building economies of scale, in theory, you should be able to do a lot more with a lot less time, maybe even a lot less money, with a lot less everything.
I'd like to jump in a little bit too, if I can. I think a really great thing when we're talking about leverage and all this stuff, would you rather, we're doing a big tech play, and that's going to, I don't want to go into that too deep, but like looking at what technology can you also either use or develop. We're developing our own that's going to save you so much time on your day-to-day tasks. Like you talking about the messaging thing, that in the reviews, that's brilliant, right?
Yeah.
But what can you do that makes you money that also can be done via AI or a technology that will streamline your process, right? And that's a huge one for me. Again, return on time.
Yep.
For us, this thing is going to take what would normally take 3 weeks to do something and turn it into 2 to 3 days.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, it depends on your goals, of course.
Yeah, of course.
My goals align with Kyle. I want to be a stay-at-home dad as much as I
Same.
can.
I love my kids. So,
I bike
yeah.
my kids to school every morning, and it's
Same.
great. My goal at this point is lifestyle design. I've achieved the capital leverage point that I want. But really, my goal is lifestyle design, to where I want to do what I want when I want.
And scale is a good way to get there. But if it was just me, and if I wasn't being dragged kicking and screaming by Jay and my wife to build this huge, international company, then I actually probably would have taken the other side. I would have said, okay, yeah, scaling and growing is big, but that's not always the answer.
Correct.
Like if your goal is just to get wealthy, to make enough money to cover your bills and then a little bit and all that, then you don't really need that.
Correct, yeah.
If it was just me doing this, I would be fine with, you talk about 5 or 6 properties you can handle yourself, especially with technology. You could probably bring that up to 10, 11, 12. That's probably where I would have stopped. I would have just, instead of having other people worry about property management, other people relying on them, having to hire and fire people. I hate hiring and firing people. It's like literally one of my
It's the worst.
least favorite people, or least favorite things to do. Yeah. Just handling it yourself. Keep it that 10 or 12 properties. That's probably where I would have stuck.
Let me throw out a quote that I just made up, but it is going. Let me tell you something. It's going to be 100 years from now. People are going to be repeating this. If you have the ability to change the world, you have the responsibility.
I agree.
To change the world.
All right. Well, let's curtail that into
Damn, Kyle, you're too big, bro.
Another would you rather?
Sounds like Grant Cardone over here.
So would you rather be royalty 1,000 years ago, or just be an average bloke right now? Bloke. Average bloke. Average.
Like where are you going with this, Kyle?
Average bloke right now, just a run-of-the-mill person with a 9-to-5 job right now, or royalty 1,000 years ago.
And let me start out with Kyle.
No caveats. Let them answer.
I was just going to say, you and I highly disagreed on this.
Yes, we disagreed on this. I don't want you to sway their answers.
No. Good.
So, I mean, I lived in England for 3 years, right? And I've seen the way the royals lived back in the day. If we're talking about medieval times royalty, their king-size bed was like an equivalent of a queen-size bed today, or a twin-size bed today. I'll be honest, I couldn't imagine waking up next to my wife with like some looking nasty. I love the modern day world where every morning we wake up, the creature comforts that we have in today's world. I will 100% take the opportunities we have in today's world versus the fiefdom of the previous day. If you're royalty, sure, you might have had it good, but I could have it so much better as a modern day man in today's world. A flushing toilet.
Average man, though. I'm not saying like a.
I was an average man. I am an average man,
You
right?
realize we have like air conditioning now and water heaters.
In England, it wasn't a matter. I mean, they still don't have air conditioning in England,
That's
right? Like, it's
true.
not a thing.
You're going that way. You're going modern too.
Hell yeah,
Modern.
I've been born and raised in Florida. There is no way I'm going without air conditioning ever. I don't care if you gave me $1 billion in my pocket today to go back. Nope, not happening.
Let me tell you something. Kyle and I had this discussion. Kyle wants to be royalty 1,000 years ago. I said to Kyle, what would you do if you were royalty 1,000 years ago? Here's his answer.
They didn't have golf back then
Here's
either,
his
bro.
answer.
Come on.
I would ride horses and eat grapes.
It's like Caesar
That's
time
not
right
exactly.
there.
He's paraphrasing a lot of what I said.
Some
But so
Roman
obviously Jay's saying that he likes the
Sure.
the comforts of today. But you guys are all coming from the perspective of like what's available now. Like think of like back then. Yes, okay, from the perspective of what was enjoyable to do back then.
Yeah.
What we have now, like they didn't have the internet, they didn't have self-driving cars, they didn't, yes, but back then, royalty, like think about how our quote-unquote royalty, celebrities, and actors, athletes, all think about how they live now. You're living the exact same way, just without these creature comforts. You're having just as much fun. You're living the dream. I just completely disagree.
You didn't have to waste your time taking baths or
baths
eating
back
chocolate chip cookies.
Kyle, it sounds like you're advocating the modern day, though. I mean, the difference between a modern day average man and a modern day royalty, if you will, is not that big of a difference. Like the creature comforts are very, very similar. You know what I mean?
I'm not talking comforts though. They like talking about the. And Jay accused me of it's just all about a power thing, like you being able to order people around. But yet, like a little bit, like you literally have people like serving you, making your food. You can like anytime that you can affect change.
Where are we right now?
You can dictate what's happening.
Take your
in
money,
your
move
area.
to India, and you can hire servants and
You can be
anybody you want.
100%. Be an expat in the Philippines, man. You'll
I feel like I'm being ganged up on right now.
No,
so
it's just
I'm
that
gonna
it's
change
just, no, it's just that you're wrong.
I disagree. What are we supposed to say? Leave it in the comments. What you believe in this
Each
one.
his own, I guess.
Yeah. All right, so let's go to one more. I prefaced you guys with a football one. It's another would you rather.
Okay.
Would you rather be an exceptional kicker on a football team, or just an average tight end?
I'll answer this and
Tight end number one, but like an average one. Like we're not
Greg's
like one
talking
of
about Cameron Brate versus Gronkowski there, and then
or like
Gronkowski's
Kelsey.
not average.
no, I'm saying like
he's
I'm talking about making sure we're talking about the same right.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Like so, we're not talking like you got like.
Sorry,
Travis
Cam, I love
Kelce
you. I
and
missed
then
you already. I wish you would have. They didn't cut you. No, I'm going kicker all day long because if I'm an exceptional kicker, I'm Justin Tucker. I'm Adam Vinatieri. My career is 20 years long. My average yearly salary is $3 to $5 million a year, and all I gotta do is kick a damn ball. Yeah, and I don't have to worry about concussions and killing myself and my body being a thing 20 years from now. Yeah, all day kicker. I played soccer too. So.
Yeah, just for Jay's reference, Robbie Gould actually just said he's going to test free agency, so he's one of the best kickers, and I think his salary is between $5 and $6 million.
Yeah, I remember like when he played for Chicago, and they cut him because he was making too much money. He's washed up, and then he goes to San Francisco and kicks for the last 8 years or whatever it's been, and just crushed it.
Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah, he's amazing.
I mean, I'll go to our point earlier, return on time, right? And as a kicker, I feel like your return on time is going to be so much further than an average lineman. Sure, linemen might have a little bit more pizzazz to it, right? Like I'm a lineman. You're not Gronkowski though. You're not talking about the higher level tight end. The no-name tight end versus an exceptional kicker, 100% a kicker, without a doubt.
Here's the funny thing. I know nothing about football. I'm not a football guy. Kyle had to explain to me the difference between a kicker and a tight end.
And an average tight end one is still going to make a lot more. I shouldn't say a lot, 8 to 10 probably, right? 8 to 10 million for an average for a tight end one.
Honestly, it's not much more than the kicker.
Yeah,
but we're talking about an exceptional kicker. Yeah.
I mean, I think Cam Brate was making like $6 million, $8 million, maybe tops.
Yeah, let's say that the comparison is $5 million for a kicker, $8 million for a.
The question is, are you going to take Sebastian Janikowski or David Akers? I'm taking Janikowski.
None of these words make sense to me. But here's what I do know: I'm going to take the longevity of career.
Yes.
I'm going to take the stability and the lack of risk. I'm a conservative guy. And so give me the lack of risk, give me the longevity of the career, and then give me 50 years of not having to live with CTE.
Yeah.
And we're
all right,
good.
like I feel like this is I swear guys, this isn't
ganging
just
up
me.
on him today.
This just isn't me playing devil's advocate on everything. I honestly believe all of these answers.
You were a professional athlete, so you have a different view.
I take tight end 100%.
Okay.
Just because of lifestyle, because I know being like number one tight end on a pro football team versus being the kicker on a pro football team. Not that we shouldn't respect the kickers, because we do respect the kickers. But the life
you saw the implication there.
But the life that a tight end is going to live versus the kicker is going to live. Yes, the tight end might only play 5, 6, 7, 8 years, but those 5, 6, 7, 8 years are going to be worth more than double the career.
He's going to be tight end royalty 1,000 years ago.
Let's equate this to real estate for a second, though. Like, let's take
you can't equate their lifestyle that a professional football player who's a tight end,
even a
no-name tight end, no-name tight end.
No,
okay, let me look at this.
We didn't say no. We didn't say no name. We said an average. We said
he would have a name.
I'm going to give you perspective here too. All right, I'm a smaller guy. I'm 5'11", almost 6 foot. I could be a kicker. I'm 185 pounds or 165 pounds. I could be a kicker.
You're probably tall for a kicker.
Maybe. Let's look at the body of a tight end. That dude's going to get
6'3", 225.
That guy's going to get noticed at the club.
Yes.
A lot better if you're talking about lifestyle than this scrawny little
kicker. I am
kicker
talking
over
about
here.
lifestyle.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Okay, so I see your point to a point. Yeah.
No, that lifestyle only lasts until you're married.
And when you're making
everyone gets married and gets to that point.
Yeah, they do.
Up until that point, though, life's all about the stories that you can tell when you're dead.
Yeah, and regardless of whether you're making $5 million a year, $8 million a year, neither one's going home alone.
And Cam Brate did catch the Lombardi Trophy when Tom threw it off the boat. So
I'll give it to you.
I do love you, Cam.
I just think
if you ever watch this, I love you.
From the
Cam.
real estate side, I think of it as an investment that takes 40 hours a week, but makes triple the money. But it takes 40 hours of my time every week versus an investment that makes a third of the money and takes 10%. It takes four hours a week.
You guys are too practical.
Which one are you going to take?
You're thinking too practical.
I 100% take the less money.
Kyle's just thinking about what Giles thinking about.
Life is all about the stories you can tell when everybody's going to die. Everyone, there's only a certain amount of money that's going to make you happy and a certain amount of money that you could leave to your kids. And you've already reached that threshold. Tight end, kicker, doesn't matter. You've already reached that threshold.
Yep.
So it's all about the life and the stories you can
I
tell.
will say
You'll be telling your stories from your wheelchair. I'll be pushing your wheelchair.
my goal is not to create memories with random strangers. I want to create memories with friends.
But they're going to want to. Are people going to want to hang out with the guy pushing the wheelchair or the one telling the story?
No,
Here's the deal. Here's the shittiest part about both of these scenarios, though. Whether you're the average tight end or you're the most exceptional kicker for the most part, neither one of you are getting in the Hall of Fame.
Kicker might.
There's one kicker in the Hall of Fame.
There you go.
One. I
That
mean,
is pretty
Vinatieri is
sad.
a shoe for that. But, like, again, how good did he have to be and how long did he have to kick for to make the Hall of Fame?
All right. Well, before you guys gang up on me another time, let's wrap this up.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Where can guys find out more about you?
Sure, guys. RoarGardner.com is where my website is, and you can see my book's coming out, and hopefully in May, June timeframe. I'm looking really forward to that. So if you have any agents or you work with agents, you're looking to really support and teach them how to work with investors, that's really the focus of the book there. So RoarGardner.com.
Or if you want to learn to be a fighter pilot.
Hey, if you want to fly fast jets and have a good time, yeah, I'm down anytime, guys.
Best way to find me is on our broker site, outfastrealty.com, or you can find me on Instagram at Real Greg Simpson. Always putting good stuff out there for you guys on Real Greg Simpson.
Appreciate it. Everyone knows where to find Jay, so we don't need to talk about it. But we appreciate you guys coming out.
Yeah,
We had a lot of fun
thanks,
here.
guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks
for the drinks.
Yeah, let's have another one. Keep it going after
Cheers.
off camera.